that because that was the meeting that was held at up in Hercules? And is it actually, if there are only 3 members there, was it even officially a meeting to have minutes?
Yeah, so it was officially a meeting. It was noticed as such, and it was agendized. So we discovered after the fact that we did need at least 4 commissioners to vote for those minutes. And we actually intended to bring it back to you, but unfortunately we brought back the wrong date. You'll notice that you approved October 2nd twice. And so in the future, and Nicole can speak more on this if I say anything wrong, but in the future, if there is not a sufficient number of EPC members who were present at the meeting at the time to vote yes, then the remaining EPC members can look to the other commissioners voting yes as sufficient evidence to vote in favor of the minutes.
But I guess if the meeting was noticed, but there were only 3 members, is that even a quorum to call it a duly constituted meeting?
So, this is Nicole. Good evening, commissioners. I think there might be some confusion. I think that the 3 commissioners were voting for the minutes, not the number of commissioners attending the meeting. But I'm actually not sure how many commissioners attended the meeting. The 3 was, I think, the vote for the meeting minutes because 4 of the commissioners had abstained due to not being present at, well, I guess I see what you're saying.
But there were new, sorry for interrupting, there were new commissioners appointed between the time of the event and the vote. So
Okay.
I believe there was actually a quorum at the time. We just didn't have enough commissioners who were on the EPC at the time to vote.
Okay. So this will come back then some other time?
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions from the commission on the minutes? Okay, if not, would any member, oh, wait a minute, Commissioner Caprelis, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I was just going to say I would not be voting on the June 3rd meeting because I was not present at the commission during that time. So I will abstain from voting for June 3rd.
Okay.
And if I may, just to clarify, which it's fine if Commissioner Capriles wishes to abstain, but as Eric had indicated, it's pretty customary that even if not present for that particular meeting, to be able to rely upon the minutes that had been taken, but ultimately up to the commissioner whether to participate or not.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
All right then, any other commissioners wishing to comment on the minutes or offer amendments to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I will ask, would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on the minutes? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. Planner Haran will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Planner Haran, are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the minutes?
There are none shown.
All right. Emails that were received by 5 p.m. were forwarded to the EPC. And then having done public comment, I will bring it back to the commission for a motion to approve the minutes. Please raise your hand if you would like to put a motion forward. And I see Commissioner Haymeyer.
Can I make a motion for all 4 draft meeting minutes, or do we need to do them individually?
I think it's okay, but let's check with Nicole. I see Eric shaking his head. Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Correct. You can do them. You can do them for all 4. I would just ask if Commissioner Capriles is abstaining on that one, that just be clarified so we're clear about that one, those minutes. But otherwise, it can be one motion, even with an abstention.
Yes, I'll be abstaining for just that one date.
Okay. Well then, Chair Cox, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the Environmental Planning Commission on April 15th, May 6th, and May 20th, 2020.
And
I'll
June
second.
3rd? Okay. Okay, we'll have to take a roll call vote on this. So Planner Haran, would you call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Capriles,
Abstain.
Commissioner Haymeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmeezing,
Aye.
Commissioner Yin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cranston,
Aye.
and Chair Cox.
Aye. All right, so then that passes either 6-0 or 7-0, depending on the date, with abstention from Commissioner Capriles on the one date that she had mentioned.
Chair Cox, I only made a
Yes.
motion for the first 3 meetings. I did not make a motion for June 3rd because I
Okay.
misunderstood Commissioner Capriles. I thought she was just abstaining from June 3rd. I didn't realize she was abstaining from all of the meetings.
All right. Do we want to do this over again then, or?
I think we can just do the June 3rd one.
Okay. Would some commissioner like to make a motion on the June 3rd minutes?
I'm happy to. I had
Okay.
omitted it. I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
All right.
So I'll move to adopt the draft EPC minutes for June 3rd as presented in the packet for our September 2nd meeting.
All right. And do I have a second? Please raise your hand. Commissioner Lowe is seconding. Okay, then Planner Haran, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Capriles,
Abstain.
Commissioner Haymeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmeezing,
Aye.
Commissioner Yin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cranston,
Aye.
and Chair Cox.
Aye. All right, so having dispensed with the minutes, we will move on to item number 4, oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the EPC on matters not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the commission from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on a non-agenda item? If so, please click the raise hand button on Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. Planner Haran will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Planner Haran, do you see any members of the public wishing to offer comment in this section on oral communications from the public?
I do not.
All right. Thank you. Emails received by 5 p.m. were forwarded to the EPC. Having no comment from the public on items not on the agenda, we will move on to item 5, new business, and item 5.1, COVID-19 permit extensions. There will first be a staff presentation from Planning Manager and Zoning Administrator Stephanie Williams. Would you like to start, Ms. Williams?
Thank you. Yes, and if Planner Haran could enable screen share, please.
Sure. Having difficulties seeing my ability to promote you. Let's see. Are you able to change it, Chair Cox, for her?
Sorry, I don't see a button that allows me to do that. But I did see Stephanie talking there a minute ago. So,
Can you do it now, Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. All right. All right, there we go. So thank you and good evening. Oh no. Oh dear. Okay, well, we're just going to, I think, default to, okay, here we go. So in response to disruptions to the development process as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, staff is proposing one-year permit extension for all valid planning permits beyond their expiration dates, which would allow applicants an additional year to pull the necessary building permits for the project or establish their use. It would apply to approved valid permits as of March 16th, would be in addition to any approved permit extension allowed under our current permit extension process, and would not extend or reactivate expired permits. This would not be a codified provision and would not amend the zoning ordinance. This would be a temporary provision which would be applied based on its implementation parameters. Staff will present a resolution for council consideration implementing the proposed permit extensions at the September 22nd City Council meeting and will provide any comments or recommendations the EPC may have on this matter to council later this month. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So it says here that I should take public comment first. Is that appropriate? Or do we want to take EPC questions first?
Either is fine with me.
It's up to the chair, but it's customary for these more informational or study session items to take public comment first.
Okay, well, let's do that then. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. Planner Haran will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Planner Haran, are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
I am not seeing anyone.
All right. Emails that were received by 5 p.m. were forwarded to the EPC. Not seeing any public comment, we'll bring it back to the commission for questions and deliberation. Are there any commissioners who have questions or would like to make comments on this item? Please raise your hand. I see Vice Chair Cranston.
Just a clarifying question for Stephanie. So someone could apply for a normal extension and get the 1 year, so they could actually get however long the normal application plus a year? I didn't understand that earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, they would be cumulative.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and Commissioner Haymeyer.
Thank you, Stephanie. Just a couple questions, and I know this is informational, so anecdotal information you have would be helpful. So the projects that you've received extensions for, are they mainly housing or commercial? Do they cluster in any type of category, or it's across the board?
It's really a mixture of all types of applications. Some are housing projects and some are just standard conditional use permits.
And then I guess it seems like 1 year has been the standard for most cities. I guess I'm just wondering if any of these potential projects might not go through as a result of the economic implications. Are there any communities that are thinking of longer term extensions, or 1 year is the maximum?
I haven't seen any that are go beyond 1 year. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Capriles.
I just think this makes a lot of sense, and it is, I'm glad to see that we're doing that to make it realistic for people during this time period. So thanks for doing that.
And Commissioner Lowe?
My question has to do with the length of the extension as well. I'm curious to understand staff's analysis on 6 months versus a year, seeing that some city has chosen to go with 6 months. What are the pros and cons with the 6 months versus 1 year?
So the cities that we found that did 6 months, that was in addition, they adopted their extensions early on in shelter in place. And so the 6 months was in addition to the unknown time frame of whenever shelter in place, the provisions of that would have been lifted. So I think they were being conservative, not knowing how long shelter in place would take place and the disruption to the development process that would be, and then thinking that 6 months would be a reasonable time beyond that. We landed on a year as being reasonable. Pretty much basically because a year extension is pretty standard. Our own city process that allows extensions goes up to 2 years, but more standard extensions really only need a year to tie up loose ends and get issued their building permit or their subdivision map. So we felt that a year was a reasonable time frame, especially coming through out of the shelter in place and just seeing what's starting to be the true implications of the disruptions of the pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other commissioners that have questions or comments? Okay, I just have one question. I mean, it's a little bit on the side from this, but are we seeing also a delay in people going forward that are in the process of doing a development project right now, based on the conditions, and telling you things like, well, we might have been wanting to fast track this project, but we might be wanting to take our time? That's either for Eric or Stephanie.
I don't think right now. I don't think we received that feedback. Their standard 2-year entitlement provision, and some people, pursue their building permits or establish their use very quick, and some people have their own path and timeline within that 2-year time frame.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Lowe, do you have another question? Okay, I'll take that as a no. If there are no more questions or comments, would someone, do we have to take, we need to take a motion for this, right, or no? Eric?
Chair Cox, this is Nicole. It's an informational item, so it was just for comments from the commission. So no formal action would be needed.
All right, because I mean, it said deliberation. I didn't know if that was a prelude to making a motion or it's just a question for discussion. So are there any other, I'll just add to Commissioner Capriles' comments that this sounds like a very prudent thing to do and will save some staff time and just sounds like the right thing. So I'm happy that you guys are being proactive about this and putting it up for a vote at the council or approval by the council. Vice Chair Cranston.
I would say the same thing. I think the I think all of us had hoped back in March that 6 months would be more than enough time, but I think the 1 year number is more appropriate. So I would certainly encourage council to look to the 1 year number. That seems to be, hopefully will be enough, but it certainly, I think 6 months is probably too short.
Okay. All right. Last chance for comments on this before we move on to item 6. All right, seeing no further comment from the commission, I will thank Zoning Administrator Williams for bringing this item forward and informing us on it. And let's move on then to our public hearing. Item 6.1, a planned community permit, development review permit, provisional use permit, and heritage tree removal permit. Sadly, they're always there. For a hotel development at 2300 West El Camino Real. First, let's do the standard thing of asking the commissioners if they have made any contact with the applicant or have had any site visits. What happened to the, oh, I lost the thing where I can see the raised hands. Here, give me a second. Oh boy, this keeps going. There we go. Okay. Okay. So I'll start out, I guess. I did go back to the site, but I have not talked to the applicant since we had last seen this item. Commissioner Yen.
I did a drive-by of the site, but have not spoken to the project applicants.
Okay, Commissioner Sneezing.
I also visited the site, but have not talked to the applicants.
Okay, Commissioner Lowe.
Likewise, I visited the site, but never made contact with the developer. And the previous review by the EPC, I was not on the EPC yet.
Okay, and Commissioner Haymeyer.
I also hadn't visited the site and have not talked to the applicant.
Okay, and Vice Chair Cranston.
I have not physically visited the site or spoken to the applicant.
All right. Did I get everybody?
I have not visited the site nor talked to the applicant.
Okay. I think that's everyone. Okay, thank you all for your disclosures. And now we will have a staff presentation from Senior Planner Diana Pancoli and Planning Manager Zoning Administrator Stephanie Williams.
Is somebody speaking? Somebody speaking?
I don't hear anybody yet.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Diana Pancoli, Senior Planner with the City's Planning Division, and I have with me tonight Stephanie Williams, our Planning Manager and Zoning Administrator. The item in front of you tonight is a public hearing for a 4-story hotel development at 2300 West El Camino Real. The 0.97 acre project site, 0.97 acre project site is located to the north of El Camino Real between Ortega Avenue and South Rengstorff Avenue. The project site has a general plan land use designation of mixed use corridor and is also part of the medium intensity corridor sub-area of El Camino Real precise plan. The project site is surrounded with commercial uses and multifamily residential uses in the vicinity, and is currently developed with a 3-story, 71-room hotel with underground parking. I should say subterranean parking. The project applicant is proposing to develop the site with a 4-story, 153-room hotel development which will have an underground parking garage. The project, it will have a commercial setback characteristics as per the El Camino Real precise plan. The ground floor uses will include dining area, guest lobby area, and the reception area. The project is also going to include a courtyard, which will consist of fitness area, spa area, some fire pits, and seating for the hotel guests. The guest rooms are distributed on all the 4 floors, and the building has been designed in a U shape. The project will also include landscaping along the perimeter of the entire project site. The main and the only entrance to the underground parking garage is along the El Camino frontage, and the applicant is proposing a 100% valet parking program for accessing and parking in the underground parking garage. The proposed design is modern architecture, and it utilizes a variety of high quality materials, including various types of trespa panels, smooth plaster walls, plaster frames, and metal frame trellises as well. The El Camino frontage has been designed with specific emphasis on the pedestrian experience, including use of wooden trespa panels, a metallic art feature, and also a prominent and hotel entrance along El Camino. The project is consistent with the El Camino Real precise plan development standards, except a side yard setback encroachment by a balcony feature, which is permitted in the El Camino Real precise plan for similar architectural features. And that has been mentioned and discussed in the staff report. The project is also going to propose removal of 1 heritage tree on site and removal of 22 non-heritage trees on site. As a proposal, the project is proposing to plant 30 new trees along the perimeter, as I described earlier. And the project building design steps down to 2 stories along the rear property line in order to meet the zoning requirement, as well as it is in line with and more appropriate with the adjacent 2-story apartment buildings at the rear location as well. This is the second time the city is reviewing this project. The project was previously reviewed by EPC in 2017 and approved by City Council in 2017. The applicant has been working with staff on the building permit plans, and because of some unfortunate reasons for construction drawings, the applicant was not able to complete the process in time and the entitlement expired. Therefore, the project is back in the planning review process with minimal changes to the site plan, including changes to the courtyard areas, reducing the number of hotel rooms, and and an additional curb cut for trash pickup. The project is found to be categorically exempt as per California Environmental Quality Act (CEQA), Section 15332 Infill Development Project. It is also to be noted that this project is a Tier 1 project development under El Camino Real precise plan, and the applicant will be making a public benefit contribution in the amount of $637,897, which will go towards city's affordable housing fund for funding future affordable housing in the city. In conclusion, staff finds that the project is consistent with our general plan and zoning requirements, and it actually furthers the kind of development that we have envisioned along the El Camino Real precise plan area. So staff recommends the EPC to recommend to City Council to conditionally approve a planned community permit, the development review permit, and the provisional use permit to allow hotel development and reduce parking at the site with the removal of 1 heritage tree through the heritage tree removal permit. As the next step, if approved, the project will go to City Council, and City Council will Here, the EPC recommendation, it is tentatively scheduled for September 22nd, 2020. Alternatively, the EPC can also recommend the project with further modifications to conditions, or refer the project back for further development review, or deny the project if it finds the site is not suitable. Staff would like to note that during the between the publishing of the staff report and today's meeting, staff found a mathematical error in the public benefit calculation, which will change the total amount that the applicant will be contributing, and that amount has been, the correct amount is just discussed in the staff briefing, as well as right now is on your project on your screen as well. And that concludes staff presentation. The applicant is present here tonight. If you have any questions for staff or the applicant.
Okay. Is there a applicant presentation as well?
Aaron, can you promote Perry Patel in the attendees, please? Maybe I can speak for him at this point of time. Definitely, if he can get on the call again, but based on my previous discussions with him, I don't think he has a presentation tonight, but I think now he can speak.
Hello, I'm not sure if you can hear me, so.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Diana, thank you so much for the presentation. Commission, thank you so much for listening to our presentation. I actually don't have a formal presentation. I think Diana's done a great job of describing the project, as well as given the fact that this project has been passed through and there's minimal changes to it, we felt as though it was best to just leave Diana present. And I'll let Tom Jess, our project architect, say a few words.
Perry, I'm not sure if Thomas is on the online right now, because I can see Adriana Cook from the applicant team, but not Thomas.
He's in the, he says he's got his hand raised. Let me see if I can text him and see if what name he may be under. He's saying that it should be noted as just Tom, T-H-O-M.
I see an Adriana Cook and a Bruce England.
I don't see him either.
Given maybe the technical difficulties, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. And let's see if Tom can maybe hop off the meeting and then hop back on and see if perhaps his name shows up in the participant list.
All right. Should we wait for him to come back, or?
If we have 30 seconds, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, we can do that then.
It looked like
Okay,
this
Tom.
Adriana Cook to jumped on and jumped off and then raised their hand again. Maybe we could just promote that person and see if that's the right person. The one with
okay.
raised.
Eric, I don't have co-host abilities anymore to do that. So if somebody is able to do that, please.
Okay, I promoted them.
Okay. Is this, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're under Adriana. That was the.
I guess I joined as Adriana. I apologize for the confusion there. Anyway, this is Tom Jess, not Adriana, with Eris Studio Architects. Thank you to the EPC commissioners and to Chair Cox for hearing us today. As Perry mentioned, we don't have a formal presentation because this is technically like a reapproval of a project, but I did think it would be helpful to just give a little background on how we got to this situation and where we are in the process. So we are fully committed to doing this project, to moving it forward. In fact, we had gotten through several rounds of plan check and we're closing in on just a few remaining comments when we were notified that the planning entitlements had expired. We had, in order to get to the point where we were submitting drawings, we actually lost a little bit of time because we explored a few different options with how to build the hotel. We explored a modular solution. We just had finished a modular hotel in South San Francisco and it went really well. So we spent some time exploring that with different modular builders and lost some time there because it just didn't pan out. It just wasn't a good solution for this particular site. So we lost some time there. And then we went in and submitted and prepared the drawings for a conventionally built building, went through, we were going through plan check. We were emailing every week and going back and forth and responding to comments. And then we got a notice that our permit or planning entitlements had expired. And that because the way that the conditions of approval were drafted, that there was no opportunity or option for an extension. And I think it's a little funny timing that the item right before us was extensions, because we would love to have had an extension. We would have been under construction by now for sure. And with that in mind, I'm hoping that you can find a way to reapprove the project and allow us to continue. The only request I have on the conditions is that the same condition that prohibited us from getting an extension on the last project is worded the same on this one, and it's condition number 3. It would really be helpful. We don't have any intention of extending this any longer, but it would be really helpful if there could be a sentence added to the end of condition 3 that just said, the permit will be null and void unless an extension is granted. And it was the wording of that condition that prohibited us from getting an extension the first time through. So if there was an opportunity to revise that, that would be really helpful to us. But the drawings are complete. We just need to modify the drawings to update them to the current building code because they were submitted under the previous cycle. And if we're able to get this project re-entitled, we will have plans resubmitted, very shortly, in short time, just a matter of a month or so would be my best guess. We do have myself and Perry both on the line, able to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I'll go ahead and end the presentation, but thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to getting this moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. So now let's take it back to the commission for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. There's Vice Chair Cranston. Go ahead.
I guess 2 questions. I had been focused on if anything was taken out, but the catch of the community benefits fees. Maybe wonder if there were other fees that have also changed since this was approved. For example, park and lieu fees. It looks like housing is already accounted for because of the community benefit. Are those also been taken care of? Are there any of those that need to be reviewed? Or Stephanie or Diane?
So usually when, the fees are to be updated, the community benefit fee is a special thing. It is not part of our usual fee structure, like a housing impact fee or BMR fee or something like that. And that's why it is very specifically mentioned in here. Otherwise, the other fees which have been adopted through our usual master fee schedule annually, we do not include specific dollar amounts in here. They are calculated at the time of building permit issuance, and the applicant works with us to do that. So that's why they have not been specifically mentioned in here. It just says that the application will be subject to a lot of these fees which are related to the permit.
Okay. Then second question to the applicant's question about the expiration, the way it was worded, was there a reason that was done the first time? That it didn't allow extension through the normal process?
The condition, the way it's worded, this is our standard condition. This condition is applicable to each and every permit that goes through our planning entitlement process, irrespective of what kind of permit it is. So it is an absolute standard condition. The applicant does get an opportunity to apply for an extension, but they have to apply for it before the permit expires.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, staff will suggest not changing any language of the standard condition of approval.
Okay, Commissioner Lowe.
A follow-up question. Was the applicant notified before the, I'm hearing an echo. Was the applicant notified a certain number of days before an entitlement or permit expires? Is that in our process to do so?
So we try to do it in our best interest and for providing the best service. But at times it is also being missed because, the staff is really focused on processing a lot of permits. We're really short staffed for past couple of years. And that is the reason why the conditions of approval have been written very specifically, and it goes through a public hearing process. The applicant can know and review the conditions beforehand, and they can ask questions if they had any.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I know our staff is very busy. So another question, perhaps this is for the applicant. I'm a little confused as to how many heritage trees are being proposed to be removed. In the project plans on page L-3, it indicates that 3 heritage trees are to be removed, namely number 3, number 4A, and number 4B.
And maybe I can provide a little bit of background.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the applicant's arborist is present here tonight. So there is a mistake there. The existing palm trees 4A and 4B, which have been shown as the heritage trees, are actually not heritage trees by the definition of heritage tree as we categorize in City of Mountain View. The same thing has also been indicated in the arborist report. I think the arborist report stated that it has not been determined as heritage. And that's the mistake in the plan set, where it's saying that 4A and 4B are actually heritage trees. The girth of the tree is not big enough for us to categorize it as a heritage tree. So at this point of time, consistent with the resolution, the applicant is proposing to remove only one heritage tree, which is the heritage tree number 3 along the rear property line.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, Commissioner Smeezing.
In one of the questions submitted by the EPC, talking about, sorry, looking for the question, comparing this project with the MTA, because this project was approved before that went into effect. It's not subject to that, but staff did mention that they reviewed the site-specific transportation analysis with the draft guidelines of the MTA, and I was wondering if there were any concerns that emerged when that review was made.
So can someone promote Renee Gunn as a speaker?
Someone from
Renee Gunn is the project engineer on the city side, and she would like to answer that.
She's been promoted. She can talk now.
I think she's just muted. If you want to unmute, Renee.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening, Commissioners. This is Renee Gunn. I'm a senior civil engineer with the Public Works Department. And, turns like you can get, I've been given video also. So yes, we did review this in-house for comparison with the MTA. In general, it complies with it. This project has limited ability to do bike and pedestrian improvements beyond what is there right now. It's relying on the El Camino Precise Plan to meet those requirements. And there's not a lot of other things that we saw that could be done as part of this project.
Okay. Commissioner Haymeyer.
Thank you, Chair Cox. I have a question for the applicant. I know this project has been many years in the works, but I wonder if the recent pandemic is perhaps encouraging you or would potentially open up any changes in the design that we see before us tonight. I'm not sure in terms of hotel operations if there's anything that would have to be adjusted and whether that could be done within the current scope.
Yeah, so this is Tom Jess again. So this would be a branded hotel, and the brands have very specific operating instructions. In fact, they've issued entirely new operating instructions since the COVID crisis has put everyone on lockdown. Not necessarily items that would change the design of the hotel, the look, the feel, the size of it, more operations. They want as much fresh air as possible, ventilation, heavy duty cleaning. They've changed some of the electronics and the locks to make things more keyless. So we would be incorporating those, but we don't anticipate anything that would change the physical structure of the building itself.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see Commissioner Lowe.
I just realized I forgot to ask one more thing. In the resolution number 43, it talks about relocating, it's 43 relocation. It talks about tree number 4 in the arborist report shall be relocated to another location. Is that still up to date?
No, that is going to be revised and presented to the City Council.
Okay. So number 43 will be revised, will be deleted because are they not being relocated? They're being removed. The 2 palms are being removed.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Yin.
Hi, thanks. I understand that between 2017 and this current application that there was a change in the curb cut, and I had asked one question. Thank you, staff, for answering that question earlier. I understand why there was an additional curb cut. I was just curious whether or not in the initial design there was any thought of trying to get the trash done along the same curb cut as the entry into the garage, so that along El Camino we're minimizing the curb cuts, since we're trying to make it a boulevard in such a narrow lot. Now we've got 2 curb cuts, which means people walking have to then look out for traffic every time there's that cue that the curb breaks. And I know that's difficult to do now at this late date, but maybe it's a question for staff also in what we're trying to do to minimize curb cuts on El Camino. And I also noticed in the answers in the staff report that all the curbs are painted red on El Camino Real. And I guess I didn't realize that. If you could talk a little bit about that as well, because given such narrow sidewalks and how close we are to the curb, with 40-mile-an-hour cars driving, sometimes parked cars actually add a buffer and pedestrians feel a little safer. Sorry, those are 2 different questions. Hope that wasn't.
Definitely, I can respond to that. So you're right. Staff actually did explore a revised design or a design alternative where the trash could be included in the same curb cut. And it was determined during the building permit phase that that was actually not feasible. In looking at the building design, if you can understand that, the ground floor, there is an entry feature for the vehicle entrance, but above that, the second, third, and the fourth floor is actually a building. The hotel guest rooms are actually built on top of it, and there is a limited amount of space that will be available for the trash trucks to operate. We were trying to balance between, whether we can avoid having a trash truck parked on El Camino Real, which is going to then disturb the bicycles and the pedestrians along El Camino Real, or to reduce the number of curb cuts. We tried that and it didn't work out. And that's why I think with the revised design that we are proposing, where the second curb cut is only for trash pickup, and it is not for a vehicle entry for parking or anything, it is actually going to reduce any trash trucks that will be parked on El Camino Real and hinder any kind of bicycle movement along the El Camino Real corridor.
Okay, but there was no thought to go back and redesign the hotel to accommodate.
No, because the applicant has gone through so much substantial design and they have invested so much into the building permit process as well. They were pretty near completion, as they just mentioned in their commentary. That's why a substantial change to a building design was not explored as part of this iteration.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I understand. And regarding the second question about why there's no parking at all, everything is painted red on the curb and there won't be parking. When I walk down El Camino now, it is so noisy, you can't even talk to the person next to you. Cars don't go 35 miles an hour, they go much faster sometimes. And when I'm walking anywhere, it's always more comfortable if there is that buffer of parked cars there, so it doesn't feel like, cars are whizzing right by your shoulder.
I will let my my peer Renee Gunn answer this, but I think my understanding as a bicyclist is the fact that I don't feel safe if I'm going to bicycle along with high moving traffic and the parked cars as well. And that might have contributed to the decision for painting red curbs along El Camino Real. But Renee can probably add more insight into that.
So in general, we're removing parking along El Camino per the El Camino Streetscape Plan and per the El Camino Precise Plan to keep the full 3 lanes of traffic, of vehicular traffic, plus the bike. We need to remove the parking.
Commissioner Yin, you're muted.
Thank you. So it's just a matter of the right of way. There's just not enough to get parked cars in there, as well as the bike and the lanes of traffic.
Correct. We would need another couple feet of right of way from every property along El Camino to maintain the parking.
Okay, so then it's the bicyclists that are now the buffer between the cars and the pedestrians. Got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Smeezing?
Sorry, not specifically related to the project, but is there any plan for like protected bike lane with like even just a strip, like a median, small, not a median because it's not in the middle, but like a small little planter or something?
I would have to refer you back to the El Camino Streetscape Plan. I'm not sure on the actual design. And for this section, I know that the full design hasn't been completed yet. They've only completed the design on basically downtown towards Sunnyvale.
And if I may, Commissioner Schmeezing, I think part of it gets tricky because it's a county-controlled road, so the jurisdictional issues get difficult if it can be a class 1 versus a class 4 bike lane and who's paying for it and all those issues.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, Commissioner Yin, did you have an additional question? You're muted. Oh, I think you're saying no, so Okay, now I see Commissioner Schmeezing. Okay, she's taking her hand down. I don't see any more hands. I'll ask a few questions myself. Can you just remind me about the restaurant on the ground floor? Is that open to the public or is it only for the hotel patrons?
It is for the hotel patrons, but it does have an open patio area, which has been designed in order to kind of mimic the commercial frontage.
Okay. And, you know, when I'm hearing an echo. When we did the El Camino Precise plan, we did prioritize the community benefits for affordable housing. And I'm just wondering, can somebody on staff, I've been reading up on what we've been doing with COVID, and is it true that we're taking money from the city's affordable housing plan and using it for COVID relief right now?
So I can try, maybe Stephanie, you can chime in if you want. Based on my discussions with the affordable housing manager, city prioritizes different kind of efforts, but the affordable housing fund is specifically to be used for funding affordable housing projects only, and that is the best information I have at this time.
You don't anticipate that the money that is being put aside here for the Affordable Housing Fund would be used, would be diverted for COVID relief?
No, I have not heard that that is being done, but we can certainly look into that and bring back an answer on that question too.
Okay. Okay. I mean, like, for instance, I mean, I'm aware of, you know, several programs, right? One of a rent relief program and for tenants, and also a landlord program and a small business aid program. And do you know where they're getting their funding now?
I don't know the specifics of the funding sources for all of those.
Okay. Okay. Well, just wondering. I mean, you know, because, you know, well, I'll leave that for comments. Let's see. Another question. This is back to the applicant. I'm just curious for our own education. What exactly is a modular project, and why did you pursue it, and what are the advantages? And then why is it that you decided not to do that on this site?
Okay, this is Tom Jess again. So a modular project was one that we did in South San Francisco is a very good example. The hotel rooms are actually built in, this particular company builds them in Idaho, and then they truck them to the site. And a modular box is the guest room, the corridor, and the guest room on the other side. It's about a 70-foot long, 14 or 15-foot wide box that comes in. The guest rooms are completely finished out inside. The quality is very high, and then all the utilities from the are stubbed to the corridor, and they're connected in there. So they're stacked in place on the site, and it works out really well in a lot of different situations, especially locations where there's a lot of impact from. In theory, it would work well in this location because it's a tough site to build on. There's not a lot of staging area. However, the hotel layout and the site didn't work out very well. It works out really well in long, narrow buildings, like a typical linear hotel where you can just stack boxes. This one, because the U shape of the building made it not very efficient. And although we tried to make it work, it just didn't work on this particular site because of the shape of the building and having to fit it on the site.
So the main motivation for doing it is that this is a proven lower cost development method, or?
It's not necessarily even lower cost. The quality is very high. The speed, it does go faster. It goes quite a bit faster. And the quality is very high because you're not getting the wood rained on. You're not getting the finishes are all done in a factory. They're not having to be carried up elevators to get in there for the furniture and everything. It's pretty slick. We're doing another one in Daly City. There's one in South San Francisco. We're doing one in Santa Rosa. but they work better when the boxes fit evenly without having to cut the boxes after you ship them to the site.
Okay, thanks for that additional information. And then just one question back to, I think probably this goes back to Eric. So it's been almost 8 years, I guess, since we put together the El Camino Precise Plan, and one of the components were these TDM measures. And I'm just wondering, has staff ever gone back and looked at, did we pick the right TDM measures? And what sense do we have after this amount of time that, we're doing this the right way? Or if there's any modifications we might want to make to it, given that it's been a long time now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are always, looking for ways to modernize our standards and bring them in line with the, things that we're hearing from people in the field and even applicants to a certain extent. One thing that we are doing, and we have in the council kind of work items for us to get started, is the ordinance citywide, where we can start to look at these things, although much of that ordinance is going to be procedural. We do have, if we are finding that applicants are consistently unable to provide TDM measures, and they have valid reasons for that, then we may bring forward specific proposals for modifying those standards, but we haven't heard that to this point. And it'd be good to hear specifically, maybe at a future date when you are looking at, priorities for the council and for the commission to work on items. Good to hear the concerns that you have about the implementation of those.
Yeah, the one thing that comes to my own mind is just that back when we did the El Camino Precise Plan, like Uber and Lyft weren't as big a thing as they are now. And, like rideshare was a bigger thing at that point. And it seems to be supplanted largely by Uber and Lyft. And I just wondered whether or not that might be a reason to just ask the question whether or not some of the figures should be revised. I'll make the comment just that I'm more comfortable with these hotel projects having reduced parking just because of the alternatives available to people who are often don't need a car when they're staying in a hotel anymore. So all right, those are my questions. I see Commissioner Lowe. Do you have a follow-up question?
I've asked this question in the written question. I am curious to hear from the applicants about your thoughts on the courtyard. I know some modifications have been made, but from the drawing, there doesn't seem to be much shade that's provided in the courtyard. Perhaps you're thinking the buildings surrounding the courtyard will be shading it. I am looking for more opportunities to be able to plant more trees on the site because trees provide so much public health as well as environmental benefits. I'm wondering if you might consider planting some shade-loving trees in the courtyard. For example, maples and dogwoods are both shade-loving, and some of the species of these two kinds of trees don't require a lot of water. So you'll be able to not exceed the water requirements also. And they're really lovely to look at for your guests as well. So I wonder if you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, sure. This is Tom Jess again. So the changes to the courtyard, the primary change between the previously approved courtyard design and the one that's being proposed now is that we decided to move the fitness room down to the, onto the courtyard area. It's kind of a glass cube on the fitness, on the end of the courtyard. And that was the primary change between the two. We thought that that would help activate the courtyard and keep it more, more people using it and out there. As far as the trees go, as far as the shade goes, we do believe that there is significant shade from the building onto the courtyard. So I don't think that shade is going to be an issue. As far as trees go, we're not opposed to vegetation there. We have a lot of planting on there. We can certainly do raised planters and do tall shrubs and so forth. And in reality, creating the best, most inviting courtyard is only a plus for us and for the hotel guests. So that's going to be the goal all the way through from start to finish, is to create a really good, strong guest experience. And if we can get some trees in there, we certainly will.
Yeah, because if you plant trees and planters, they don't grow to their full potential. So I think it's best that they are planted into the soil directly.
Well, unfortunately, in this situation, there's a parking garage below it, so we don't have soil in the courtyard.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be in a planter regardless at that point.
You would need to haul in a lot of soil in order to do that properly.
Correct.
I guess.
And it's tricky.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that brings me to another area that I was looking at, again, for the same purpose of increasing tree coverage, which is the 2 palms that are being removed. I think what you're proposing is to plant 2 new palms, which I would request that you change that, because palms don't really provide all that much benefits to the environment nor health. They don't absorb that much carbon. They don't clean air that much compared to broadleaf trees. So I would request that you change the replacement trees to be something that are broadleaf, large statured, preferably if they can be native, that would be even better. But depends on the site of those 2 new queen palms that you're going to plant. If you could choose something that can provide tree canopy as well as, if they're native, preferably.
Sure. Yeah, staff passed along that comment to us earlier. I think it was today even, and we have no objection to that at all. So I think that what we proposed to staff was maybe wording it to be, native trees to be coordinated with the staff or with the city to do that. We have no objection to doing that at all.
Okay, yeah, and if you have a project arborist,
Sure.
I'm sure that person may have input as well.
Yeah, we have a landscape architect and an arborist that have both contributed to the project, so we're in good hands.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Smeezing.
So Chair Cox's comments on the TDM made me think of another question. So looking at your proposed TDM plan that includes free transit passes for employees and guests, financial incentives to employees who use other transportation methods, and then free shuttle services. You'd brought up that there might be some operational changes with how the hotel is run given COVID. And while we hope that this does not go on for an extended period of time, are there any operational changes you're considering to your proposed TDM, I guess, methods of engaging in the TDM, things that you've been thinking about?
The short answer is no. We don't feel like, I agree with you. Hopefully this isn't going on for a long time. And by the time this hotel gets constructed, it'll be another year or 2 down the road. Hopefully the COVID crisis is something that we look back upon at that time. But as far as social distancing and cleaning surfaces and so forth, I think that that's going to still stick around for quite a while. So if we do have to make adjustments, we will. But at this point, we haven't anticipated any or planned for any.
I'll just add to that as well, which is, we're too early on in the current crisis to understand what the new operating procedures will be in regards to new operating practices. If you look at most of the hotels in the Silicon Valley, corporate business is essentially down to a null. Most of the tech companies have actually shut their offices, and so we're not seeing any airlift coming into the market where corporate travel is what it was pre-COVID. And so we're too early on in the current environment to establish what those new SOPs will look like in terms of valet and even rideshare. Uber, I think Lyft was also mentioned as well. I am a big believer that we will likely return back to what we think is normal, albeit with probably some modifications and, like as Tom noted, in terms of cleanliness. But it's too early on in the current environment to make decisions as to what that will look like once normalcy returns.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may, I just wanted to answer to Chair Cox's earlier question regarding the source of funding for the rent relief effort. And I was just talking to our affordable housing manager, and she confirmed that those are the rent relief funding is coming from the BMR and the CDBG funds that we have, and some private funding as well. The affordable housing fund is not being utilized for rent relief efforts.
Okay, thanks for filling me in on that. All right, are there other commissioners with questions before we go to public input? All right, I don't see any. And so I will ask, would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. Planner Haran will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Planner Haran, do you see any attendees wishing to speak?
I do see a Bruce England, and my abilities to let someone speak is not available. If you want to.
It's working. I unmuted.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Bruce England, Wisdom Station.
Can we pause for a second? I'm sorry, Chair Cox, how long may they speak for?
I think 3 minutes is fine, since we probably don't have a lot of comment.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I only need 10, so that's fine. No, I only need a couple minutes. Thanks. Okay, Bruce England, Wisdom Station Drive. I'm speaking for Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning. We didn't submit a letter on this, but we part of our mission is to protect and enhance our infrastructure for bicycle and pedestrian transportation. So I'm just going to make a couple of points on that. A lot of my questions have already been answered, so don't have to go into any of those. But we definitely want to see a minimal number of sidewalk barriers, so posts of any kind, racks. I guess you don't see too many of those anymore, but anything that blocks the sidewalk. El Camino is pretty abysmal, as I'm sure you all know, for anybody walking and biking along there. Minimizing the curb cuts, one of the commissioners commented on that. I understand the limitation. If they can be minimized, that's great. And there are multiple plans and guidelines that are available. So there is the El Camino Streetscape Plan, which was mentioned, and the El Camino Precise Plan, which was mentioned. There are also complete streets guidelines at the state level, and I haven't heard that discussed. I also didn't see it in the staff report. And I just wanted to comment on the bikes issue and the no parking, that one of the problems for bikes going along there in a lot of parts of Mountain View is dooring. So if you have a car parked and you're biking along there, you have to really allow enough space, because people do open their doors and accidents have happened that way. And lastly, it's not clear to me that the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee had the opportunity to review this project, and I think they ought to, given these bike and pedestrian impacts. And that is all for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. England. Are there other speakers? Glenn or Haran, do you see any other speakers?
I do not see anyone else raising their hand.
Okay. Since there are no other speakers, I will mention that the emails received by 5 p.m. were forwarded to the EPC, and I will bring this back to the Commission for deliberation and action. Since this is a public hearing, we will be looking to make a motion at the end of the deliberation. So let's start. Are there any commissioners with further questions or comment? Please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Lowe.
I would like a little bit more information about the El Camino streetscape, which is a document that I'm not very familiar with. I heard someone said earlier that it's in the works. What stage is it at?
So the El Camino Streetscape Plan has been approved by council. We can make sure that the EPC commissioners get a link to a copy of that.
So perhaps I heard it incorrectly. I thought someone said it was still being worked on.
So the overall streetscape plan, kind of the conceptual, precise, a little bit more than a precise plan level, has been approved by council. The implementation of that plan, specific CIPs to install bulb outs, the striping for bike lanes, that is in progress. One of those projects is in design right now, and the other two are in future years.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Capriles. You're on mute. Are you there, Commissioner
I'm sorry.
Capriles?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, now we can.
Okay, all right. So I think this is a good project for El Camino. I think it's we've noted that a lot of the property along El Camino is not an easy one to build on. So I think that was really well designed to make it appealing and give it curb appeal. And I concur with Commissioner Lowe that any of the native trees and broadleaf trees that can be planted on the property to really enhance it and then to contribute to the greenhouse emissions that will, help us achieve those goals is very, very much appreciated, and we really support those the native trees, and to make that part of the way we put any buildings on within the community, and that's what we're really trying to achieve here. So appreciate your willingness to kind of look at the types of trees and to make those modifications. As far as the TDM, I understand that we are in a situation where it's pretty unknown at the moment, but would like to publicly comment. We'd like you to keep that in mind, because that's also something very near and dear to our hearts, to make sure that people are utilizing not only public transportation, but they have other options to utilize something other than their personal cars. So thank you for resubmitting your project, and I think it is a good one for our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Schmeezing.
Yeah, I want to echo some of what Commissioner Capriles was saying. I do really appreciate the efforts that this project has made to encourage public and active transportation for guests and for employees. And, you know, as the situation involves, if updates need to be made to the TDM, that you guys are willing to do that. I really appreciate the incorporation of art and green spaces into the hotel, and I would encourage the project to continue to work with arborists or with other experts to identify ways to enhance the green spaces available, and to choose greenery that will optimize public health benefits. So like Commissioner Lowe was mentioning, choosing trees that are going to provide the maximum benefit for air filtration, shade, all of that. I also appreciate the consideration of the future bike lane on El Camino. And if this does happen to be a section of El Camino where a protected bike lane is feasible, understanding that varies, that the curb cutouts would take that design into consideration and just kind of the balance between those two. And I think the suggestion by Bruce England to have the Bike and Pedestrian Committee review this project is, that would be great. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Thanks for resubmitting and presenting this project.
Okay, Commissioner Haymeyer.
Sure, I'll echo my thanks that the applicant resubmitted. I think the only comment that I had jotted down that I don't think has been mentioned before is the reduced parking. I like that the operator is considering tandem parking and really helping us get towards signals that alternative transportation modes are important and that we don't need to park for every room. So thank you for that piece.
All right, Commissioner Schmeezing, did you have another comment?
Nope, just keep forgetting to lower my hand.
Okay. Let's see, are there other commissioners that want to speak? There's Vice Chair Cranston. Go ahead there, Bill.
I guess mine's more a procedural question. When someone makes a motion on this, since the language in the staff presentation refers to as included in Exhibit 1 of the staff report, the community benefit, the public benefit item number 6, and the removal of, I think it was section 43. Will we need to read that into this when we do it, or how would that be handled? The 43 was the one for the, I think the palm tree one that Commissioner Lowe mentioned. So how do we incorporate those two changes, which would seem to be important, particularly the community benefit change would seem to be important since the staff report is not actually.
So I suggest that I have language on the screen, which will go into recommendation with 2 modifications. I'm trying to go to the next slide, which will say what exactly is being modified. This includes condition number 6 modification for the public benefit fund dollar amount and removal of condition number 43 related to relocation of the trees. I have not included any modification language here for replacement of the palm trees with more native trees, because that is more of like a usual process that we go through when we review the building permit plans. A lot of the times, the type of landscaping that has been proposed, specifically some of the tree species and stuff, kind of change based on further detailed assessment of the site and the landscape opportunity. So staff will take this direction from EPC, and as the applicant has indicated that they're willing to work with staff on that, so we'll just do it as part of the building permit process.
Thank you.
Okay. And let's see. I need to get my participants back. And it would be nice if we didn't have the echo. All right, then I guess I'll make a few comments. Does somebody know I am echoing? Okay. I think I'm not echoing now. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, in general, I do like the project. I did vote for it last time. It's substantially unchanged. and I have no reason to change my mind on the basic idea of it. The modifications seem like ones that are reasonable ones to attract more customers, but I also want to echo what I hear from the other commissioners that, you know, I mean, having some native trees and some shade trees, you know, would be a good addition into the courtyard or in some place. I mean, just hotels sometimes, you know, they feel a little bit more like home if you can have some shade trees to help make the courtyard area feel a little bit more natural. And so I'm glad that you're open to that, and I'm glad that you'll be exploring that opportunity. You know, I mean, I understand why, you know, for a hotel, the first priority is to make sure that the restaurant is available to the people who are using the hotel as residents there. But I also know that, you know, there are a lot of hotels that are able to make a ground floor restaurant open more to the public. And some actually become destination places. And one of the things that I felt about the, I mean, looking back on the El Camino precise plan, it was the first precise plan that I worked on when I became a member of the commission, and I also served on the special El Camino task force with Eric Anderson here, who led that task force. And so I had additional responsibilities with that because this was a particularly important one for me. And looking back on it, now that it's built out a lot, you know, I've seen some pluses and minuses with it. In general, I think it's been a big plus. The buildings that we've gotten on here are new, are modernized. They're up to the sidewalk. It does provide, there was no pedestrian interest in the past. I mean, you know, it was just El Camino was a place that you drove along and you just dropped off somewhere to use a business and then you just drove on. There was no connectivity there. It's become better, I guess, in terms of we had this idea of walkability and bikeability and pedestrian interest. And I think it's becoming more bikeable, even though, you know, there's always the question of safety biking on El Camino. Walkable, yes. I mean, we're getting more consistency along the sidewalks, and I think that's a plus. Public interest, it's a step up from where it was before, but in general, I still wish there were more destination places for the public as we went along. In general, I mean, you know, I think it just comes from that whole problem with retail. You know, I mean, just finding it much more difficult to attract retail in a new project than it has been in the past. And so I guess I'd give us an 8 out of 10 on this one, but yeah, as much as we can do on any of that, I think is a plus. And this is certainly consistent with other buildings that are along El Camino, and it is an upgrade to what is there now. And so I'm very much in approval of the project. Let's see what else. Yeah, the other comment that I had, and in fact, one of the council members actually just emailed me the answer to the question about the sources of funding for the rent relief and mentioned that it's coming out of, the rent relief is coming from the BMR housing funds and CDBG funds were used for rent relief, it says here. And small business and small landlord relief program funding came from the general non-operating fund. So I will thank that council member for providing that information. And he also mentioned that, that, you know, that there isn't currently a big move to add a lot of further funding to the rent relief program from our affordable housing funds. Yeah, and that's just the comment that I wanted to make. I mean, I think in general at first, you know, there was a great movement to take money from our affordable housing, from our BMR housing funds and use it for COVID. I think that was appropriate at first, but I think also there was this idea that maybe COVID was going to be gone soon. And it looks like, you know, it's going to be a year out. And I'm encouraged by this comment that I've received an email that, you know, we're not going to completely drain, you know, our affordable housing funds, because I think, you know, the intention when we put together the El Camino Precise Plan is that this could provide affordable housing to people over a long stretch of period. And so I'd like to see that continue. And let's see. So anyway, those are my comments on it, just generally quite favorable toward the project. Are there any other commissioners that would like to comment on the project before we ask for a motion? Not seeing any. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion? Vice Chair Cranston.
Sure. Diana, can you put the language back up, please? So I move that the Environmental Planning Commission conditionally approve the planned community permit and a development review permit to construct a new 4-story, 75,358 square foot, 135 room hotel, replacing an existing 71 room hotel, a provisional use permit to allow a hotel use and parking reduction, a heritage tree removal permit to allow the removal of a tree on a 0.97 acre lot located at 2300 West El Camino Real, Exhibit 1 to the staff report with, next page please. The modification of condition 6 to read the public benefit, wherein the applicant will provide public benefit to the fund to the City Affordable Housing Fund with an estimated value of $637,897.68. And number 2, remove condition number 43 for relocation of a tree.
Okay, is there a second to the motion? We have 3 participants with raised hand. Let me take a look. Keeps moving around. Okay, Commissioner Haymeyer.
Great, I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further comment before we vote? Seeing none, Ms. Pancoli, would you call the roll? Or sorry, Aaron Moran should do that.
No problem, I'll do that. Commissioner Capriles?
Yes.
Commissioner Haymeyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmeezy?
Aye.
Commissioner Yin?
Aye.
Vice Chair Cranston?
Aye.
And Chair Cox?
Yes. Okay, so it looks like the motion passes 7-0. All right. Thank you for coming and representing your project. And we'll wish you well and when it goes to council, and we will move on now to, yes.
Sorry, if I can just real quick administrative action. If you could please make Ms. Haran a host. I think you have to right click on her and if you can make her the host, that'd be awesome.
Okay, here, let me see if I can find her. There she is. And it says you're saying if I right click on her?
Or there might be 3 little dots in the corner. You can click that.
Sorry, I only have her as a participant and my only actions are ask to unmute. Oh, more. Okay, let's see. Make a host. Here we go. Yes, there we go. All right.
And Ms. Haran, if you could please make Chair Cox a co-host.
I will do that.
Perfect.
Done.
Wow. Okay. Hopefully everything's right with the universe for item number 7 now. Thank you, Eric and Planner Haran. New business. Let's go to item 7.1, Plan Bay Area Regional Housing Needs Allocation. I believe there is a staff presentation from our Advanced Planning Manager, Martin Alkire. Take it away, Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cox, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. I hope you can see the screen. But I will be making the presentation this evening, along with Mr. Anderson, our Principal Planner, regarding Plan Bay Area and the RENA process. My presentation is just going to touch really briefly on the key points in the staff report. I'll start off with an overview of both the processes, and then really focus on kind of the local implications of these processes, both at the county level as well as the city level. Talk about some potential RENA allocations that have been discussed by our ABAG's Housing Methodology Committee, and then go over next steps. So Plan Bay Area is required by Senate Bill 375, the Sustainable Community Strategy, is essentially trying to plan how the Bay Area can continue to grow in the most sustainable way possible. One of the key metrics is trying to reduce greenhouse gases per capita while also continuing to grow. The plan, again, as a regional plan, focuses on those 4 broad topics that you see on your screen: economy, environment, housing, transportation. And it also includes some very broad implementation strategies for a variety of topics regarding infrastructure, streets, transit, et cetera. And those strategies, again, can be implemented both at the regional level, at the county level, as well as at the local level throughout the Bay Area. And I believe in the, as attachment to the staff report, we kind of point out some of the local City of Mountain View projects that really share some of these same goals and that we are implementing at the local level. Finally, the Plan Bay Area is a kind of a just again a regional growth plan, but it doesn't take away any local land use authority. Cities still maintain local land use authority. Now on to RENA. Again, this is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation that is led by our state's HCD department. And those numbers will go into our housing element that we must update every 8 years. And the link between the two processes is that the RENA must be consistent with the development pattern established by Plan Bay Area. That is where growth is located throughout the Bay. And the RENA process uses different methodologies to calculate how much housing should be allocated to each city in the Bay Area region. And the RENA process can use the growth scenario established by the Plan Bay Area, or they could establish their own. So the numbers you see on the screen there, again, for the next housing element period, the Bay Area has been allocated, over 440,000 units. That's a substantial increase from the previous housing element period, which you see on your screen as almost 188,000 units. I should also note that RENA is guided by several statutory objectives. There's an attachment to your staff report that outlines those 5 or 6 key objectives, such as RENA must include an increase in housing supply and the mix and types and affordability levels of housing. It must promote infill development and a number of other broad strategies. And then finally, as the RENA allocation gets implemented at the local level, cities must commit to the housing policies and programs in their housing element. And Every year we submit an annual progress report to the state, and to demonstrate, how we're doing both in housing production, but also in implementing various policies. In terms of the Planned Bay Area, where we are now in the process, recently there's been a lot of meetings at ABAG with the Housing Methodology Committee, but what planning staff from Mountain View, as well as other cities, have done in the county is we got together and discussed kind of some of the draft numbers that we were seeing for the county and among our own cities, and we jointly drafted a letter that went through the Cities Association, and then it was forwarded on to ABAG, and it basically outlined the amount of growth being forecast for Silicon Valley, as shown on the screen there. And our concern was the high level of growth anticipated for the region, and being problematic in that we don't have as viable transit, say, as other regions in the Bay Area, notably San Francisco or Oakland, mainly with BART. And so, one of our kind of concerns was not only the unrealistic amount of growth and how it would be very difficult to implement, but adding all that growth without a viable transit is a concern. And so again, we were saying perhaps more of the growth should be allocated to San Francisco and Oakland. Drilling down to the local level here in Mountain View, again, the map on the screen shows the Planned Bay Area growth distribution for Mountain View, and it's very similar, just basically identical to the change areas in our general plan. Again, where we're seeing and have been planning for a lot of growth in Mountain View for well over 10 years in line with our new general plan, or 2030 general plan. Again, San Antonio, El Camino, East Wisman, North Bayshore, those are all the geographies where we're planning growth. So it's very similar to the Planned Bay Area geographies. However, the big disconnect is the amount of growth. And you can see on the screen kind of the existing households we have, what we've been planning for in terms of total new households, and then what Planned Bay Area is planning to 2050. And that's almost double our existing size right now. And the Cities Association letter does point out that cities all have a responsibility for adding housing. But like a lot of other cities, we were concerned about the high amount. So we pointed that out in our letter, and we're continuing forward in the process. So for RENA, again, as I mentioned, the Housing Methodology Committee, which is the subcommittee which has been kind of tackling all these different methodologies for how to allocate housing across the Bay Area region, has kind of settled on the methodology on your screen, using the growth from Planned Bay Area to 2050, the growth in households, and then using some additional factors to further adjust that number based on different income levels, very low, moderate, et cetera. And through this kind of process, what we're seeing now, the rough numbers, we're seeing that Mountain View could potentially be allocated approximately 9,400 units for our RENA, which is the 2023 to 2031 housing element period, where we would have to demonstrate that we have enough sites and appropriate zoning to accommodate that number of housing growth. And again, you can see on the screen what our previous RENA was. And it's percentage growth from our existing 2019 households. And then as a kind of a method of comparison, we looked at also Palo Alto and Sunnyvale's growth under this new methodology. And you can see what their numbers are, just to give you a sense of how we compare to those cities, which are somewhat similar to Mountain View in that we share the same kind of Caltrain line. We have a lot of jobs. We're very high resource communities in terms of education levels and resources like that. So that's where we are. The next steps in the process, again, we're going to City Council next week. and on your screen kind of shows the next schedule of the Plan Bay Area along with the RENA allocations. And this is all leading up to the final Plan Bay Area, which is slated for adoption September 2021. And then housing elements will be due January 2023, again, based on that final RENA allocation. So that concludes the overview presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Okay, it looks like the next thing on the agenda, though, would be public comment. And so would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. Planner Haran will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Planner Haran, are there any people on the line that want to comment on this item?
There's not anyone raising their hand to comment.
Okay. I will note, thank you, Planner Haran. Emails received by 5 p.m. were forwarded to the commission. So we will bring this now back to the commission for questions and deliberation or discussion. So it looks like Commissioner Capriles wants to be first out of the gate. Go to it, Commissioner Capriles.
Just a quick question for Mr. Alkire. So do you feel like this is negotiable as far as the number of units that is assigned to Mountain View? I mean, do we have any wiggle room? It seems pretty extreme, to say the least, of the expectations for that amount of growth. And I'm just not sure that we can accommodate that many. And and particularly your point, and I'm glad that the cities sent the message to talk about the viable transportation, because that just is an ongoing issue for us here in this particular area. And the ability to have a BART or have a public transportation system that's really reliable in this area just has not been forthcoming in the last many years. So where do we go from here, Martin, on an individual city basis?
So we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. The main numbers coming down from ABAG and the Housing Methodology Committee are really rooted in the Plan Bay Area numbers. So those numbers are fairly high across the region. And so while we might be able to tweak a little here and there, it's not going to be substantial. I mean, we all recognize we will be getting a large number, as will other cities. And just to reiterate, the state, obviously, as you all know, has made housing a priority, and therefore, are really upping the allocations this year or this cycle for not only Bay Area, but other regions as well, the Sacramento region, as well as San Diego and LA. So again, we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room because it is based on those very gross Plan Bay Area growth assumptions.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Haymeyer.
And so, Martin, it kind of seems like a blunt tool in the sense that the city's progress to date on adding housing elements isn't weighted in any way. There's just been this huge increase that needs to be met, and it doesn't matter if one city has made a lot of progress toward it and other cities have not.
That is correct. I mean, in past housing element cycles, that has been a factor that folks have talked about and actually have made a point of trying to include in the formula. So you're right. It's nothing that necessarily we get credit for. although at every opportunity we rightfully point out the amount of housing that we are producing, the amount of areas that actually the EPC and council is well aware of rezoning areas like North Bayshore and East Wisman. You know, we feel good about that, but clearly now we're in a new environment where there's a lot more expected of us.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Cranston.
Thanks for the update, Martin. I was struck by your initial comment was that Plan Bay area isn't locked in stone, but it certainly sounds like the RENA numbers are coming from Plan Bay area, so they may not be locked in stone, but they're this untouchable thing that we can't touch. And so I was looking at the job growth patterns that you included as I think it's pages 17 and 18 of your response to the questions. And if one of the objectives of Plan Bay area is to put more into the priority development areas, to go for transit-rich areas, go for the high resource areas, all of those drop in the allocation of jobs and of housing in this proposed plan. I mean, with the exception of the transit-rich, but it's certainly in the job growth, it's moving it away from the priority areas, it's moving away from the transit areas. And have they commented on that? Number one, the reason for thinking that job growth in San Francisco and Contra Costa County are going to drop off noticeably and be fully absorbed by the South Bay is counterintuitive to me. When, you know, up until COVID, everybody wanted to be in San Francisco, and it just seems counter. So is there any, I'd appreciate any comment on that. And then the third thing would be, was there any response from ABAG to the letter that the Cities Association sent on these items? Because a letter was sent, but are they going to do anything with it? Are they going to respond? So again, the first one is why move jobs away from priority development areas and transit areas and high resource areas? Why do they think it's going to shift south? And are they going to respond?
Sure. So I'll take a couple of those, and Mr. Anderson, you can feel free to chime in as well. But just a little brief history of PDAs, just as a level of context. So PDAs are priority development areas, and that was started by ABAG a number of years ago, where they asked cities, can you identify areas in your community near transit that you expect growth, because we want growth to be near transit. So the city voluntarily included El Camino and San Antonio, downtown, and eventually North Bayshore. But what ABAG found is that not enough cities were volunteering priority development areas, and more importantly, not enough development was taking place in priority development areas. So the ABAG expanded their definition of where they wanted to see more growth, and so they added these new categories: high resource areas, transit-rich areas. So that's why you might be seeing some growth in these other areas besides the formal PDA areas. That's one thing. The other thing is that, again, we discussed with ABAG, and we've heard the HMC acknowledge our concern over the amount of growth in Silicon Valley, but then they also said, we recognize that, but we also realize that Silicon Valley has a lot of underutilized large parcels, a lot of aging malls, aging office parks that have the ability to add a lot more density, commercial density. In addition to that, as we all know, Silicon Valley continues to be an attractor for jobs, not only large high-tech jobs, but attracting other smaller companies and other businesses serving all that growth. So just by virtue of our history of success at creating jobs and our geography, we are slated to have more growth. And then, Mr. Anderson, I don't know if you wanted to comment on the issue with Contra Costa or those competing areas, and what you've been seeing in kind of your analysis of those numbers.
Well, I can't say for certain the why. As we often say, the Plan Bay area is something of a black box. We know what the policy goals are, but we don't know exactly how they turn into actual numbers in the output. So I would just reiterate what Martin said about some of those attractive factors of Silicon Valley, the available land, the large parcels, the utilized parcels, which may not have as much of a positive effect on San Francisco, and Costa County isn't quite the job attractor that the South Bay is.
Okay, Commissioner Lowe.
I would like to hear your thoughts, Martin and Eric, on the transit side of the story. Obviously, we lack viable public mass transit, and if the state expects us to, if the state expects the Silicon Valley to produce so much housing and so much growth, is the state investing in the transit area to help us overcome that? Do you have any insight in that?
Well, that's a very good point, obviously, and that's central to all our minds. And when we did raise that issue at one of the meetings, I think someone pointed out that, San Jose is getting the BART. And so we're trying to move in that direction. And that's a valid point. That is going to be a connection and that will help. But in terms of the state investments, I mean, we all realize living in where we live in Mountain View, how difficult it is to get around now, driving around, and how poorly some of our transit agencies, although they try very hard, we're just not seeing the performance. Not only that, but Caltrain has capacity issues. It's just very difficult. So it's a tough situation we're all in, and the hope is that we will continue to see some state investing in the future for transportation.
Okay, Commissioner Sneezing.
I had a couple questions similar to Commissioner Lowe's question on transit. I remember this came up during our VMT legislation discussion, that tension between, is along some of these corridors, is this really high quality public transport? And then the hope being that by including that in the CEQA exclusion analysis, that it would attract more development in those areas, thereby creating a virtuous cycle and improving the quality of the transport. I was wondering what staff's thoughts are on that, and if potentially community benefits packages, if there is that residential development in those high priority areas, if that would help the public transport situation.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, the hope is with the VMT process, again, that we'll see more investments in multimodal transportation, and the different ways that we can move people around in a more sustainable way. That's the hope. In terms of community benefits, that's a great idea. Certainly in our North Bayshore precise plan, the priority community benefit there is transportation improvements, and certainly community benefits can be leveraged in different ways, and certainly devoting some of that to transportation improvements makes a lot of sense.
In your opinion, having spent a lot of time on this, do you think those improvements will happen within this RENA cycle?
Yeah, transportation infrastructure projects are obviously by definition take an extraordinary amount of resources and a long time to do. So we obviously won't see some of them, but we are constantly in either design or construction phase of a whole variety of transportation improvements. In fact, this fall, we're going to start construction on the Shoreline Boulevard reversible bus lane that's going to connect the downtown transit to North Bayshore. So again, a lot of these things take a lot of time. If they can be tied to projects, they can maybe be sped up a little, but for capital projects, they do take several years.
Thanks. Realize I'm asking you to hypothesize a bit. And then my other question was related to R3 zoning. In the staff answers to EPC questions, it was mentioned as a potential way of increasing density to allow us to meet these RHNA targets. And wanted to see if there was any additional details you could share.
Right. So that is a city council goal to look at the R3 zoning district with the idea to incentivize more stacked flats, more apartments. At this point, we don't know. We're a ways off to coming up with an absolute number of what we think or even where we could upzone. But that's certainly something that will probably be part of the R3. And just as an update, we are going to the City Council in October to get confirmation on kind of the next steps, the key kind of scope-related next steps for the R3. And once we get that confirmation, we will go full into the update process and involving the EPC probably starting in 2021.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Commissioner Yen.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for the update. It's very interesting. I did have a question. It just seems like with the numbers that we did have in the past, we were already having trouble meeting a lot of the below market rate ones. And I don't know if in the talks that you've attended in the meetings, whether or not people are addressing the fact that it's been tough to get the below market rate to date. If we are increasing it yet that much more for the foreseeable future, then it just feels a little bit like we're getting pushed off a cliff without a parachute. We're also trying to maintain a lot of our existing lower cost housing. And if developers are going to come and redevelop to be denser, they're not going to do so with BMR in mind as a goal. They're going to wait until, given the economics of construction, that they can make it back. And that's high-end luxury. So I see that it's a little bit conflicting, and I don't know if people are talking about that at a higher level.
That's historically been the problem with every city meeting their RHNA goals. Obviously, Mountain View, we've done very well in terms of producing a total number of units, much better than other cities, but not so good in the very low and low income categories. Better than some cities, but it is always very difficult for a whole number of reasons. But yeah, we realize it's difficult, and the hope is through tax credit programs, BMR ordinances, other things, that we can see more development of units in those income categories.
Okay, thank you. It would be great, if that conversation kept getting pushed forward, because it seems key to the whole thing. I had a second question, and this is a little bit different. This is in regards to the fact that if we are trying to densify, is there talk about the very important need in maintaining a larger percentage of open space, usable and diverse open space, as we densify? You've got New York City with Golden Gate Park, and there's no way that's going to get built out because it's so important to everyone that lives there. That land is valuable per square, whatever foot, and yet it's worth it. And they know it because they live in that kind of dense surroundings. Now, we're not quite there yet. We're in suburban sort of density, and we don't feel it. But if we're going to densify it over the years, I want to make sure that we are adding to that conversation that it is very important to keep usable open space available. I just noticed that in, in the discussions, they talk about finding areas that are underutilized and trying to target those as development areas. Well, when they're underutilized, they can be utilized as great open parks, not just for building more stuff and housing and office space. And it's just as valuable. And I just want to make sure that that point is made.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few questions and a few comments. One of them is that when a while back when we talked about the idea of putting MTC and ABAG together, one of the ideas I heard floating around was this will be an effective combination because it will mean that we can tie, transit funding to the areas, where we see, and need the growth to happen. And so, I mean, I guess I'd ask the question, look, if they want to project in the 9-county Bay Area that our single county would pick up 44% of the employment growth, is there also the same enthusiasm on NDC to give us 44% of the funding for transit in the 9-county Bay Area? Or,
No.
I'm not trying to be completely facetious, but I mean, they did say that, and I want to know if that's part of the conversation.
So actually, we did bring that up, and just so you all know, the process that I just described, it is part of the regional transportation plan. So it all kind of links together. And the numbers that I've seen is that 75% of the transportation planning to implement Plan Bay Area will go to just maintaining existing infrastructure, not new infrastructure. So, we raised the concern that in Silicon Valley, we're in need of probably new strategies, new ideas. But basically the way it's drafted now is that, again, 75% of the transportation funding will be going to operating and maintaining existing systems, which of course they have a backlog and they need that, but your point is well taken.
I mean, is there a possibility of like raising additional funds through like, countywide or multi-countywide taxes?
I mean, those are always, options that are on the table. Certainly we've had things like that Measure A for VTA and other initiatives. That's always an option and probably will be an option. It will have to be an option moving forward.
Okay. Let me ask this. I mean, can you tell me in a little bit of detail, I believe our Director of Community Development, Artie, is involved with the ABAG MTC planning?
Yes,
what exactly is she doing?
Sure, she's one of, I think, 3 or 4 Santa Clara County representatives to the Housing Methodology Committee. So what that means is she goes to the meetings and, reviews the recommendations and, discusses, her concerns over where things are going and her ideas for how those methodologies should be shaped. So yeah, she's been an active participant in all the HMC meetings.
Okay. One of the things that I wonder about, when I think back, I'm coming to the end of a 8-year cycle myself on the EPC, and it's pretty much a large part of it is tracked the existing 8-year housing element cycle. And, I mean, as I look back on it, I see that, whereas we've done quite good, we've had a good production of housing, particularly in the above median income area. We have not met, the affordable goals, but our situation's not unique. Most cities, I think that over 95% of cities that are in California find themselves in a similar situation of not being able to meet the affordable housing goals. And so, one of the things that I think about with all of this is just that, do we even have fundamentally the right approach? And one of the things that I think we've done well in Mountain View is, particularly in the East Wisman Precise Plan, was, codifying this idea of jobs, housing, balance. And, we've mentioned it also with respect to our negotiations in North Bayshore. And it was even talked about when we were talking about Terabella as well. But so what I wonder is it seems like, the thought on how this goes is we say, oh, here's where the growth in employment is going to come. Therefore, we need to build the housing without the idea of saying that, well, maybe we should do RENA as a linkage. We should look at where the housing, where the employment growth is coming, and then, tie the RENA to, how much actually happens. And then cities like ours that are planning for a linkage, would then be able to, there would be at least there'd be a carrot and a stick to tie the two together. I noticed in the handouts that you sent out, there's at least the inkling of this, with the idea of, they talk about, it looks more like it's like the carbon transfer program where, like you'd buy offsets or whatever. It was kind of mentioned that way. But I'm just wondering, has there been any discussion at all about, how the former plan, did not work out, and whether or not we should be taking a look at different ways of doing things?
Yeah, I think whenever they do these plans, they always look at kind of what the successes were and failures of the past plan. And they're always trying to, giving credit to the ABAG regional planning staff, they really do try to figure out the best way forward in an equitable way, trying to achieve all these competing objectives. With regards to your specific question about jobs housing balance, yeah, we certainly have done a lot at the local level, and kind of the not exact one-to-one relationship at the regional level, but factors regarding job growth is a central issue that has been discussed in the HMC meetings for a number of cycles. And that is, cities that have a lot of jobs should maybe be getting more housing, as a very rough way of saying it, but not to the exact level that we're doing. We're doing something quite a little bit different in terms of mandating certain jobs housing relationship, but that job factor has been considered and is currently a factor, one of the factors in the current HMC formula.
Okay, I would like you to maybe, I talked offline with Eric Anderson, in the call that we usually have before the EPC meetings, asking about, like what comes next and how this might affect, how we might have to do rezoning, because fundamentally, the statutory requirement for RENA is that when you get the RENA allocation, you need to be able to, you need to zone so that that it's possible to build that. It's legal to build that within your city. So can you talk a little bit about how that, zoning might play out over the next few years? What considerations are involved? And also this idea of, how our tiering might affect, what our RENA allocation is and how it's implemented.
Right. So I think I mentioned in one of the responses, we are potentially tasked with getting this high number, approximately 9,400 units, and looking at our North Bayshore and East Wisman areas. Those areas together could potentially accommodate, approximately 15,000 units. And as you probably saw in the news, Google just submitted their plans for East Wisman of, I think, 1,600, 1,700 units. So, we set up the framework to accommodate a lot of this new potential housing allocation. One of the nuances with North Bayshore and East Wisman is that those areas also allow office uses. So we're going to have some discussions with the state housing office about, how many of those sites can we count, as it were, towards housing, knowing that housing is potentially competing with office. That being said, I think we would have a strong argument to say that, as you mentioned earlier, Chair Cox, that we have policies in place that kind of tries to link, jobs with housing. So I would like to think that the state would be favorable to that 15,000 that we've kind of zoned for to help meet this new RENA allocation. That's one thing. The second thing is we do anticipate some increase, modest increase through the R3. So between those three areas, just at a very rough level, we think, as we go through the housing element process, which you'll all see, that, I'm personally confident that we could zone and accommodate what we get from the state.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd also like to make the comment that, it hasn't quite become a truism, but you see a lot in the press now about this whole discussion about whether tech work needs to be local or it can be more remote, and whether it will be in the future. I mean, if we looked, given the uncertainty around that, that's why I would advocate rather than having a fixed RENA number, having a number that, actually tracks what happens in terms of employment, because we don't know what's going to happen. But we do know the result is a key result we want to achieve is appropriate balance. I mean, as I've gone back and I've looked over the numbers, I mentioned this to Eric offline, right? That my first reaction was that, how did Sunnyvale get a smaller allocation than we did when the city's twice our size? And on the other hand, if I look at it, there does seem to be something baked into the numbers about what the existing jobs housing imbalance is in these areas. And so it is true that, if you look at it, Palo Alto has locally probably the worst, and we're maybe somewhere around next, and then Sunnyvale is somewhat less. And so there may be some of that driving it. But a key thing here, and I want to echo what Eric is saying, that, this transparency is not a hallmark with this. For something of such serious public importance, the fact that as I said, I don't mean to boast or anything, but I do have a PhD in systems engineering and planning, and as a result, looking through the documents that we received, they're not easy for even me to understand. And I think it's a big jump to just having something like a 5-page document that you could share with the public about where all of this came from. But yet, if there were such a thing, then it would drive a lot more public confidence that we're actually doing the right thing. And so the lack of transparency is, I think it only hurts building support for this, because people can't see easily where the rationale is behind the decisions that are being made. I believe they're being made in good faith. I believe the people who are doing this believe they're doing it correctly, but it's just not clear to those of us on the outside how it's being done. And I would encourage, if there is any way that you can get more transparency in this, I think it would be welcome. Yeah, I'll let you follow up before I call in another person. If you want to say something else, Martin or Eric.
Well, just to note, yeah, two ways that we're thinking about this. From a policy perspective, ABAG has been pretty transparent in terms of what they're trying to achieve. And they've had workshops with the public where, more than, I think, 95% of the public participants say, hey, these are great policies. You're going in the right direction. We need to do more. You're doing great. That's the policy lever. Then what Mr. Anderson mentioned earlier is kind of the black box of where the numbers come from. And that, we've had a number of conversations and emails back and forth with ABAG staff to try to get more clarity on on that black box. And we do have, I think we have a call set up pretty soon again, isn't that right, Mr. Anderson, with one of their tech people to try to get that more transparency. So just to echo, I would say that from a policy perspective, I think ABAG has been pretty transparent, and some of the documents that they present are easy to understand from the policy level. The actual formulas and the black box and the data, that continues to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And yeah, and the one, I'll make a parenthetical comment about, you know, I mean, the last time I was at the Planning Commissioners Academy, right? I mean, you know, there was a lot of talk about RENA, and, you know, I mean, the one anecdotal thing that got repeated over and over again was, how did Beverly Hills end up with only one, you know, affordable unit and one market rate unit in their RENA? I mean, people just didn't think that really passed the smell test. And it sounds like, you know, at least with the methodology, you know, this will be more fair. But, you know, I bring that up as the idea that when things look very unfair, you know, people do notice it, and it does get noised around a bit. So anyway, I've said enough. I'll go to Vice Chair Cranston.
I guess maybe to somewhat echo Chair Cox's comments, you know, I have less concern about the ability of the housing HMC, whatever that stands for, to actually, if I believe the numbers that was coming out of Plan Bay area, do I trust that the HMC can put together a plan on how to apply that? I feel better about that than I do about that initial input. It's the black box that comes out of Plan Bay area, and I continue to be troubled by the comment that, well, Plan Bay area, you know, it's just advisory. People don't have to follow. It's like, no, that's bullshit. It's being incorporated into the RETA numbers, and so it's not an independent thing. It's actually part of it. So I would agree with you. The fact that experienced planners like yourself, like Mr. Anderson, others look at this and say it's a black box has me even more worried, because that says that the people that I would trust that actually should understand how this is coming out, if you can't figure it out, that doesn't necessarily convey confidence to the rest of us. So that black box somehow needs to be better articulated. With that said, my confidence that we'll be able to change that black box, as much as I would love them to open up and show it, is actually kind of low. All right. So, you know, I think we still need to fight it, but the flip side is, one of the things I wanted to bring back to you, to Martin and to Eric, you mentioned the comment about the ability, the likelihood of the state recognizing the mixed use areas as part of our number. And there's no question that I am not as familiar with the exact details of how North Bay Shore Precise Plan works. I am much more familiar with East Westman because I worked through it. And the ability to point to, if you do this, you can get these kind of houses. If you don't do this, you can't get the growth. And my question is, should we be, so I would, if I were somebody looking at it from the outside, that hard linkage would mean to say, okay, well, I'm confident that you're going to get that housing. Because if you get the growth, you've codified it and said the housing has to be there. Is that same kind of linkage as clearly articulated in North Bay Shore? Should we be going back and looking at North Bay Shore? Should we be looking at other things, even El Camino or San Antonio, to say, you know, if we're going to do these things, if you want to put in more, if you want to make it denser, it's not just a wish that you did the housing, but that we build those linkages in, so that when we do look at our plans, we can say with confidence that, hey guys, here's the document. They want growth, there's going to be housing. So you give us credit for that as part of their plan. Should we be going back and looking at those areas where we don't have that hard linkage and making it a tighter coupling?
That's a very good point. Certainly, East Wisman has kind of a lot stronger language regarding that issue. However, all the issues surrounding future growth in North Bay Shore that have centered around these master plan ideas, every time that we've talked about that with the major landowners up in North Bay Shore, as well as with the city council, that has been a key policy issue that they continue to raise. And we're confident that the major owners and stakeholders in that area understand that. And again, while I can't point to a specific language, as I mentioned, that East Wisman has, there's been enough things on the record that I would feel confident talking with HCD and looking at past proposals, looking at the existing language and past proposals that we've seen in North Bay Shore to really credibly say that, yes, we would expect to have more residential with any growth in North Bay Shore, mainly because of the transportation issues. And we all realize that just continuing to grow North Bay Shore in terms of office, our transportation system can't accommodate that. And that's the other key kind of reason why residential is so favorable up there.
Okay, I'll ask a follow-up question. I mean, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, like transit, you know, between, I mean, other than buses, between the downtown and North Bay Shore, like this automated guideway and all this kind of thing like that. Is there any potential for us to get MTC money for any of that?
So I know that VTA has, well, actually that wasn't VTA, it was actually Google that funded a VTA study for some of the automated feasibility studies that were happening, automated guideways. You know, that's a potential. To be honest, though, I think we've realized that we've had to fund a lot of our own improvements in North Bay Shore and other parts of the city, and haven't had, we just can't wait for the state, or the state doesn't have as much funding as that can accommodate us. So if the state does have some additional funding sources, we'd love to take that opportunity. But to date, a lot of these other transportation improvements that you see have been largely funded by the city.
Okay. All right. So I guess what comes next? I mean, in terms of like, what will you be bringing back to our commission on this item?
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, we will inform you of, you know, the final Plan Bay Area as it moves forward, the final blueprint. And of course, you'll be hearing about any draft methodology that comes out. Regarding this process, the timing is awkward. I think the comments on the public draft ended, I think, August 10th. So the timing does not line up well. However, we are still moving forward with taking your comments, taking the city council comments, and we will report that to the HMC and to ABAG to let them know of our concerns. But other than that, we're just waiting for the final HMC determination. And then again, it will be feeding into the RENA process that you'll all see with the housing element.
Okay. Are there any more questions or comments from commissioners before we move on to the next item?
Thank you for continuing to push on some of these important issues. I mean, I know the advocacy piece is hard.
Yeah, I'll echo that. You're in the midst of the toughest situation here in California. And so I'm glad we have you on our staff, and please keep us informed because this is a matter of great interest to us. All right.
Paul's trying to say something. Chair Cox.
Oh, who else wants to talk? I don't see any hands.
Nicole, from the city.
Oh, Nicole. Okay. Nicole, did you want to say something?
We're not able to hear you.
Yeah, she's off of mute, but she doesn't have her hand up, and so I don't know if she really wants to talk.
I wonder, I think her Bluetooth is just reconnecting.
Oh, okay.
While she's waiting, Mr. Anderson, I don't know if we wanted to ask for just a summary of comments that we heard, or key things that EPC you'd like us to formally report back to council at next week's meeting.
I can summarize some of the things that were said. I don't know if maybe then at that point we can see if there's anything else that the commission wants to say to kind of tie everything into a tidy package. I heard questions about whether, what the negotiation process is with the ABAG, whether our current progress in the RENA matters and what influence it might have. Questions about allocation of jobs in the region. Let's see. Lots of questions about transportation improvements following growth. So that was a key theme. Let's see. Question about the virtuous cycle of more density being better for transit, and our R3 process. Concern about the tension between maintaining naturally affordable units and the need to create higher density, as well as some concern about making sure that some land is set aside for high quality open space. Again, more questions about linking transportation funding to growth. Question or comment about linking housing growth to job growth. And some discussion about concern about whether our mixed use sites or our sites that involve bonus FAR or tiering, or any other concerns about what can count to RENA sites. Concern about the transparency of the process. Let's see, and that PBA is not just advisory. RENA is an output of PBA and it's regulatory, so that's kind of a disingenuous. Concern about the black box again. If we can't figure it out, it's not open and transparent. And then maybe some thoughts about expanding the explicit jobs housing linkage to other areas besides East Wisman. And then more about linking transportation funding and housing growth. So that's kind of I think that's pretty much everything that I heard from everybody. Certainly big theme was transparency and linking transportation growth to transportation funding to housing growth.
Okay. Any other comments then before? I'll ask once again, did Nicole Wright want to say something? No, she wanted.
She's moving her mouth. She's moving her mouth, but we're not hearing what you're saying, Nicole.
Nicole, can you text in the chat box?
We don't have a chat box.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
Nicole, if there's a key legal issue that you need to raise, I wonder if you could email Eric.
You can email me. My email's open. Yeah.
I also wonder, Nicole, if you go to preferences and then audio, I think you must have the microphone is either not the internal one, or because you must be able to hear us. So I think you can pick built-in microphone or same as system, and that might help.
Oh,
that work?
Yes, we did. We took public comment. Yes, we did.
That is all I would, thank you. I just wanted to confirm because I might have missed it and I couldn't.
Okay.
I apologize. Thank you.
Yes, we did.
And now we can hear you.
We did it.
Yay.
Okay, yes, it was there. Nobody said anything, but we did ask. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else on this item, we'll thank staff once again and move on to our next item, number 8, commission staff announcements, updates, requests, and committee reports. Anything back for us, Eric?
I don't have anything new to report. I'd like to welcome the commission back from the summer break. Looking forward to an exciting season. I did want to remind you of the Human Relations Commission listening forums. We did miss the English adult one a couple of days ago, but there's a youth one that's coming up, and also some for, let's see, on Thursday, September 10th, there's one for youth. On the 17th, there's one for Spanish speakers, and on the 24th, there's one for Chinese. So wanted to get that out there, make sure that people were aware that that's going on. That's all I have.
Okay, do you have anything about our next EPC meeting?
Yes, sure. Our next EPC meeting, the scheduled items are, so a little bit of a long story. We've got more accessory dwelling unit amendments to share with you. And then there are also some minor precise plan amendments to East Wisman and North Bay Shore related to this discussions we've had with the school districts about a citywide school strategy. So we are amending the precise plans to be consistent with that citywide school strategy.
Mm-hmm. And so the next EPC meeting will be at the expected time on the 16th of this month?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right. Do any of the commissioners want to report on anything they did over their summer break? Usually this was the point where the council members would talk about their vacations. You know, I went to Belgium, I went to Africa. Oh, Commissioner Lowe, go ahead.
Well, I'm not about to report on my summer vacation because I didn't go anywhere. But I did want to let everybody know that the Green Streets for a Sustainable Community Symposium is kicking off on Thursday, September 10th for day 1. Day 2 will be on September 25th, and day 3 will be on October 8th. Some of you may have already registered. If you recall, this event was initially scheduled as an in-person event, and due to COVID now it's all virtual and the time got pushed out. In addition, Canopy has a webinar series as well. Canopy is the nonprofit where I serve on the board that promotes urban trees. It had one webinar in July and August, and the next one is coming up in October. And the topic actually is very relevant to what we do. The title is Save the Trees, Please, Best Practices for the Development Plan Review Process. And one of the speakers will be our own council member, Allison Hicks. And some of you may recognize another speaker's name, Deanne Eklund. So that should be a pretty interesting webinar. If you can all attend, that'll be great. Thank you. And they will be recorded if you're not able to attend. And I can share, I think Eric probably has shared information on some of these already. If not, I can forward that to you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lowe, and I see Commissioner Haymeyer.
Yeah, I think the only other update, the Bill Lane Center where I work, we've been facilitating a partnership for the city of Mountain View and are very excited that Mountain View is going to be entering into a data sharing partnership with Stanford to look at our policing data and figure out what alternative modes of policing might look like in our community. So it's been great, and we've had our research presented to the subcommittee on race, equity, and inclusion, and so more to come on that.
Okay, and thank you. And yes, I just wanted to mention that, you know, I mean, our city council elections are coming up, and I still serve as the vice chair of the Old Mountain View Neighborhood Association and chair of the City Council Forum, which will be held on Wednesday, September 30th. So I'm hoping there isn't going to be an extra EPC meeting that night. But in any case, we'll have more information on that forthcoming. Normally we invite the whole city into the library to hear this, but we aren't going to do that this time, but we will have it over Zoom. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people to attend on that. Another thing I do is I'm vice president of the Mountain View Historical Association, and there will be an event this Sunday at 1 p.m., a Zoom event. And there's going to be a webinar, and I don't have all the details, but if you're interested, just let me know and I'll tell you what it was going to be about. I think Nick Perry is going to be giving, you know, a historical walk back in time about Mountain View over the webinar. That was what we had planned before. So there was that, and let's see if there's anything else. Nope, I think that's the main stuff I have to share. Okay, let's see. So if there are no other commission staff announcements, updates, requests, and committee reports, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:44 p.m. and thank you all for, it's great to see you again, even if we can't see you in person. I mean, you know, I mean, this is, I mean, in one way it's convenient to be at home, but I mean, I hope that, you know, sometime in here we'll be able to get together. I know that Eric, we talked a little bit about the idea of doing a virtual retreat, and I put in a plug for, he said, but how do we do the food? And I said, you give us each a coupon to use a pizza robot. And so we might try to do that. So I don't know if there's any more thoughts on that, but I think it would be nice to have that, you know, sometime before the end of the year. I'll just leave it at that unless Eric has anything else he wants to add to that comment.
No, nothing to report yet. Thanks.
Okay, okay. And so I adjourn the meeting at 9:45 p.m. until our next regularly scheduled EPC meeting on Wednesday, September 16th. I'm looking at, it says June 17th there. Okay. All right. Thank you all. We'll
Thank
be
you, Chair.
seeing you then.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you all.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.